Hi, good afternoon, everyone. For those of you joining us here today, so to all of you us here, my name is Ivy, and I'm a counseling psychologist and the head of counseling at Thoughtful. I'll be your moderator for today. It's my pleasure to be moderating this interesting dialogue on finding balance, healthier habits. So we are going to start on time, being mindful of the time for everyone who joined us here today. So first of all, thank you everyone to our partners at Common Ground for having us here to have this fruitful discussion about finding balance and also adopting healthy habits in our daily lives, be it at work or at home. So before we begin, to share a little bit about Thoughtful, we are a digital mental health company, and through our Thoughtful Chat app, it's a paid subscription-based model chat platform where it connects us to the certified mental health professionals, so you can all access daily bite-sized coaching anytime, anywhere, whether it's actually managing your stress or being at home, or you simply just want to hope to achieve some personal or professional coaching goals. Our professionals actually will work with you directly through the use of unlimited texting. So you can find out more information through www.thoughtful.world. So before we also begin to introduce our speaker, a little bit of housekeeping announcement. So to optimize your experience here as a participant on the platform, if you have any questions throughout this webinar or comments, please feel free to type in the live chat box. Also, our Thoughtful team members will be picking up your questions and comments throughout this webinar to be shared in the Q&A section. So we'll try to respond to your comments and questions at the end of the webinar. So for today, we have our lovely Thoughtful counselor, Nick Wahida, fondly known as Nick. She's a licensed and registered counselor. She will be sharing her perspective on managing work-related stress and also identifying sources of stress that can actually, affect us throughout the transition in the last couple of months. So she'll be sharing with us practical strategies to build on healthy habits and fostering healthier relationships at work and at home. So to give you a little bit of format of how the framework for today is and what to expect, Nick will introduce herself after this and tell us a little bit about her background. And then I'll kick off a conversation asking questions throughout the webinar that we should all be thinking about, about our habits or even the fact of matter stress, how we actually normally go through, right? On the second half of the time, we'll open up to the floor to everyone for you to have an opportunity to have specific questions you've been thinking about, and for Nick to also give you the opportunity to ask her, right? So just a show of hands for those of you who are here right now. How many of you can identify your own signs of stress? If you can, type yes. All right, we'd love to see if any of you here has that experience. I'm sure you do. And how many of you here feel stressed recently? If yes, it was recent, type what kind of stress. Was it work-related, home, family? And we'd love to share a little bit more after this as well, right? Okay, that's awesome. So off to introduce Nick and tell a little bit about her background.
All right. Thank you, Ivy, for the wonderful introduction and opening. First of all, thank you everyone for joining us today, this afternoon, to listen and hopefully participate a little bit in this talk. My name is Nick, and I am a licensed counselor and a mental health coach on the Thoughtful Chat platform. When working with clients, I focus on solution-focused brief therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. At the moment, I work primarily with working professionals and adults.
All right. Thank you, Nick, for your love and sharing of your profile. Okay, so our goal here today actually is to really want to have that takeaway for everyone to understand what stress is about, new ideas to develop healthier habits, and also give you a fresh new perspective, some practical new strategies that you can actually apply and achieve at home so that you can have the work-life harmony and to manage, work and home better. Sounds good? All right, so Nick, take it away to share with us what we are having today as a conversation. So, the first question I probably have for Nick is like, many of us have experienced sudden new life transition, I would say, right? Over the recent months, global pandemic, and currently with the Recovery Movement Control Order, RMCO, we hear people often saying, I am so stressed. I'm under a great deal of tremendous amount of pressure. Actually, truly, in your most concise, brief manner, how can you explain stress to us, and where would some of the stresses come from?
All right. Well, whether we care to admit it or not, everybody at some point in their life has experienced stress. And this can come from multiple sources, especially when we're working adults. So we're constantly juggling between work and home life and personal life, and that can come with a lot of difficulties sometimes, especially in times like this. So before we go deeper into identifying the sources of stress and how to cope and how to manage, let's talk about what is stress, right? When we mention stress, the first thing that comes to first thing that comes to mind is that it is bad. But is it really all bad? Basically, stress is your reaction, bodily reaction to harmful and dangerous situations, whether the dangerous situation is real or not, right? So it's your reaction when you're faced with in a situation that you feel is dangerous. In small doses, stress is actually, well, I wouldn't say good, but it serves a function. Stress serves a function in keeping you safe, right? For example, for you to be on track in accomplishing task. For example, when you have a deadline to meet, the closer the deadline gets, the more you feel like, oh my God, so stressed, right? But not all of those stress is bad, because then you are kept on your toes to meet the deadline, right? Also, like it stops you, it protects you from getting hurt when you're driving, right? And then people around you are driving in a reckless manner, then you get stressed. But then your body is put on alert for you to be ready to protect yourself, right? Basically, stress in small doses is like an indicator within you to tell you that something is not right, right? Something needs your attention and needs to be made right, I guess, to be fixed so that your body can stay in its optimum state. It's like a car, right? Like when you're driving a car, you go for regular maintenance for your car, right? And then all those like lights on your dashboard, all those serves an indication when something is not working right with your car, so that you can go fix it before the car has a total breakdown. So basically, stress acts like those indicators on your car for you to regularly maintain your health, so that you can function and not break down.
That's good to know. I really like how you put the idea of the car and the mechanism in the car. Like it gives us indicator if certain areas of the car breaks down. So our body is like car. So that's how I see right now. Visually, it's good to have that and maintenance part. I like how you mentioned that we should also keep up the maintenance as how we do with our car, with our mind and body as well, right? That's where stresses can come in. Okay, so where would you say these stresses usually would come from then?
Right, because for those who are working, we spend most of our waking hours at work or doing work. So we're going to focus on like sources of stress at work. There are 4 areas where this stress can come from at work. Well, the first is the environment you're working in, right? If it's an uncomfortable environment or unsafe environment, uncomfortable means maybe it's too cold, right? Some people like it a bit warm. Maybe it's too warm for you that you start sweating and you get uncomfortable in working. Uncomfortable chair maybe, right? Or cubicles too near to each other, too noisy. So those are all environment factors. Unsafe working place is when the workplace is hazardous, right? For example, I work with kids. Like if my classroom is unsafe, it it's an added stress not only for me because it's also a safe hazard for my students. So that can cause stress also, right? So that's work environment. Another is a job content. What it means by job content is basically what you do, your job, your task per se. So it can refer to the amount of work you have to do, your workload, the deadlines you have to meet. Maybe because of the sheer amount of work you have, you keep having to do overtime, for example, or you're giving tasks beyond your job scope, right? For example, you go in, you start at work, you have a sort of job scope, and then over time you find that your task is growing and goes beyond what you thought you had to do. And then I guess this one is often talked about because not everyone does it. Shift work, right? Because when you're working in a time that is not regular hours, so that can cause stress as well. Next is organizational. Well, what it means by organizational is a stress that can come from the structure of the workplace, right? Your role in the organization, whether it's role ambiguity, meaning you're not clear on what your role is in an organization. You're not clear about your tasks when you have to do your work, and then expectations from superiors, even the people you oversee. Role conflicts. Some people play multiple roles in the organization, so sometimes having these role conflicts can create stress. And last but not least, I feel this one is often overlooked because it's called extra organizational stressor. What it means is that these are stresses that you don't experience at work per se. It's not in the office. You experience you experience this stress outside of work. So usually people don't relate this to work related stress. For example, commuting to work, right? You get stuck in traffic, you miss the public transport, for example, you miss the bus or the train. The train comes late, the train breaks down. All this causes stress even before you reach work. So you don't relate it to work stress, but it is work stress still because you're on your way to work or on your way back home after work. And like I've mentioned earlier, shift workers, because they work irregular hours. So when they go home, usually people, for example, they work midnight shift, right? When they go home, they need to take a rest, sleep, but that is when people are starting to wake up and get ready to go to work, and maybe their own family is, stirring about, and it makes it difficult for them to rest, and that gives them stress as well. So those are work related, but outside of the work that you have to be mindful sometimes.
I think you succinctly put these into our day-to-day experience of actually undergoing stress. Sometimes it's so normal that we don't actually realize it's happening to us, right? So I'm hearing that that's actually the work-related, of course, according to the role, the task, and if expectations are not communicated clearly, henceforth you really get that stress, right? So at the same time, prior to going to work, they said sometimes like driving to work and then it's the traffic, and then or commuting, you take the train and train is late, delayed, you get all these anxious stress. You want to be in work on time, right? So understanding as well, you mentioned, I think not always we notice that people who work on shift as well, they do experience of these stresses actually, especially like late shift. They have to get off and it's going home and it's quite late. And I think all these adjustments are actually additional extra organizational stresses that you mentioned. Okay, so now that we've identified these are the sources.
Sorry, Ivy.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but before we move on,
Yeah.
I would just like to point out, right?
Yeah.
Even if we're working or we're doing something that we love, right? We're doing a job that we love. It's like this be your dream job.
Yeah.
And now you're doing it. You can still experience stress because of all these external factors. Maybe you love what you do, but all these external factors can still affect. And especially if you love your job, right? And you want to progress, but if where you're working at does not allow for like growth, maybe career growth, and then what do you call opportunities for learning, that can also create stress.
I think that's very true because it's also part and part with the work related goals that you have, performance, right? So you enter into a workforce, you're hoping that there are some challenges and then some growth, and sometimes if you don't get the opportunity, you get stressed as well. Directions are not clear, right? So thanks for highlighting that. I think that's really important as well. So moving on to understanding a little bit better on ourselves, right? So what would you say, how can we actually recognize if we are experiencing stress? Sometimes, like you mentioned earlier, stress is not always a negative thing. It's sometimes good to have stress because it gets us to perform as well. So what would you be, would you be able to sort of share or shed some lights to us some positive aspects of dealing with stress, or maybe signs of stress that we actually need to take note? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ivy. Well, like I said, and what Ivy has just pointed out, stress can be an indicator, the beginning of what do you call, to call your attention to things that you need to fix or work on, right? So signs of stress, there are four aspects or four areas on which signs of stress can be detected, right? Or you can gauge signs of stress, because often we say that I'm stressed, but when asked, okay, what exactly is causing you stress? Well, I'm not sure. Or maybe you're stressed, but is this bad stress or is this good stress, right? So usually what I do is I have a stress meter, right? Like there's green, yellow, and red. Green is where not good stress, like the manageable stress level, and then yellow is when I have to start paying more attention and do something before it gets to red. So signs that you can look for. First is the physical signs. For example, pain in your body, muscle aches. The most common one is chest pain, right? Increased heart rate or blood pressure, and then stomach ache. People always have upset stomach, diarrhea or constipation, or feeling nausea, difficulty sleeping, or sleeping too much, in fact, right? And feeling lethargic, like constantly tired no matter how much you sleep or how much you rest. And then this one is a bit difficult to detect because this happens usually when you're sleeping, like grinding your teeth. Usually people would point out, this happens when you're sleeping. So those are physical signs that you may want to look out for in your physical. Next is emotional, right? When you're feeling restless or easily frustrated or moody, feeling overwhelmed at work, and you find that you're losing control, avoiding people, and it's like, I'm not motivated to go to work. I used to love my job. I don't think anything has changed that much, but I'm feeling so unmotivated and I don't know why. Then you may want to pay attention. Behavioral is when you notice changes in from the name itself, from the way you behave, right? From the way you act, like changes in appetite. You're finding yourself eating too much or too little, or procrastination. You're putting off work, you're adopting nervous behaviors, for example, nail biting or fidgeting. Right, these are signs to look out for in the way you act. And last but not least, it's not there in the slide, but it's mental functioning, because usually people put this together under emotional, but it's slightly different because it relates to your cognitive function or mental functioning, right? Forgetfulness. You find that you keep forgetting things to do or keep forgetting things, so that's forgetfulness. Worrying, constantly worrying that something might not go right, something will go wrong, unable to focus. That's usually a big sign. And being always negative. I'm like, okay, if I do something, it will turn out bad. If I make a decision, it will be a bad decision. And then racing thoughts, so many things going through your mind. So mental functioning. So these are the 4 areas where stress can manifest itself, and those are the indicators lah.
Okay, that sounds like a good way to sort of gauge. I think a lot of us sometimes take advantages of like whether or not these signs shows up, and sometimes we dismiss it. But these are like what you said, body actually responding to what our situation is right. You said from emotional eating to psychological stresses such as like sometimes your behavior. So I was wondering, this sounds like sometimes we do eat, but I think I'm hearing it's the biggest shift is the one that we are more concerned, right? Because sometimes we do that, but if you notice excessive, I think sleeping, not able to rest well, for example, and you said a little bit about like when it's the breathing or feeling lethargic. So I think it looks like it's a bigger shift that what gets us more concerned and really look into it. Okay, so now that we have identified these few the more like concerns from physical, behavioral, and psychological, so what is the most important traits or for us to actually have to alleviate these stresses? So like I think how can we manage better, right?
All right.
Yeah.
So once we have identified, or maybe like when you start noticing all these signs, right? It's easier to manage or to control, I guess, to cope with before it becomes a more serious health condition, because it can get to that if it's left unattended to. Some of the ways that people have done, usually do, to manage or to cope with feeling stress, usually because we don't feel good about ourselves and we want easy fix, and the unhealthy ways are usually easier and more satisfying right then and there, but in the long run it will affect your health more. Some of the unhealthy coping ways includes unhealthy eating habits. It can be, like I mentioned earlier, eating too much, binge eating, especially when you're at work, and there's not much you can do in ways to alleviate stress. So the easiest is to snack in between meal, right? It's easy. Have a box of chips or biscuits and it's within reach. Usually people binge eat on salty snacks, biscuits, sweet stuff. So unhealthy eating habits, binge eating. Addiction. It sounds very serious, addiction, but addiction can also refer to addiction to unhealthy food or drinks, which relates back to the first one. Like constantly drinking soda or coffee to a certain extent because it's caffeine. It helps you like be more alert, stay awake. But when it's taken too much, it increases heart rate and it can give migraine too, right? And it may affect your sleep and your body rest time, right? If taken too much. And even like watching shows, binge watching TV shows can also be addiction. That is an unhealthy way of coping. Smoking, right? I don't smoke, so I don't know how it feels like, but I've heard people say that, like, oh, I'm so stressed, I need to go out and smoke. It could be just the fact of them, taking a breather outside is what is helping them. But while standing outside smoking, usually smoking is a time that people are allowed to leave their workplace and do, right? Rather than, I just want to go stand outside. It's like, and do what? So smoking. And last but not least is risk-taking. What it means by risk-taking is that not like going bungee jumping and stuff, but it's as simple as, when you're feeling like a little under the weather, but you feel, yeah, but I can still stand, like I don't want to take time off and still go to work, even when you're not feeling well, right? And then if you're like trying to get to work as soon as possible, you're late, reckless driving. So this can be risk-taking, put yourself in danger, because when you're driving recklessly, your heart rate increases, and in the long run, it's not good lah. And coming late to work or even cutting work, it goes, the opposite. It can go both ways. Not wanting to take sick days, even when you're not feeling well, or like cutting work too much. Some people avoid, right? And last brings me to the last point, which is avoidance. Like it can be avoidance, avoiding your colleagues and like isolating yourself. So these are all unhealthy coping. When there's unhealthy, there's also a healthy way of coping. There's always a contrast. Some of the unhealthy ways you can do to help manage your stress is exercising, or even as simple as being physically active. And when I say exercising, you go straight to, but I don't like going out and playing sports. I don't like going to the gym, and I don't have time to exercise. Well, it can be as simple as like taking the stairs, or doing like simple exercises in the work, which we'll get to in a bit. Right, picking up hobbies, little things that you can do, like listening to music, reading. I said, but I don't have time to read novels. Well, there are like shorter stories that you can read online. In fact, while you're at work, it takes like maybe 2-3 minutes to read, coloring or drawing while you're sitting at work, on the phone, doodling, just to keep your hand active. Social support. When I say social support, it's basically just reaching out, talking to your colleagues, because they are in the same situation as you are. They may understand what you're going through. Family members to help you out. For example, you have too much to juggle, work and home. So reaching out to your family members, to your spouse maybe, or even to your children if you're old enough, to help out, see where they can help out at home, right? And friends, obviously friends can be a big support to you. And even your managers or bosses, like for example, if you feel like I'm handling too much right now, then speak up, reach out, then work together to find a workable solution, right? Last but not least is relax. Have a plan, right? What it means by having a plan is, again, it relates a little bit to the social support that I talked about earlier, is reaching out when you feel it's too much, right? Sometimes you say, oh, but I don't want to say anything because then I may seem incompetent, right? But it's better to have a plan. Say, okay, if I have 3 deadlines in the same day, am I able to meet them? Have a schedule, have a to-do list, right? Prioritize your work. Like for example, I have 3. Which one is most important that I need to finish today? Put that at the top of your list, and then you work downwards. And if you can't finish, then it's not as important. You can push it to the next day. But of course, when you push it to the next day, put it at the top, right? And if you feel you can't do it, speak up, say something. So maybe you can work together in finding, like, maybe some work can be delegated perhaps, or can have a later deadlines. So yeah, take action, have a plan, and this is also where good time management comes in.
I think these are really helpful ways for us to manage to deal with the stress that, which I think most of us, is pretty common that we have that. And like how you share both unhealthy and also be mindful about what actually is healthy that we actually can take more action to actually foster it in our day to day, right? So I'm picking up on like make sure it's doing more of moderation than excessive, because you mentioned that there can be a cycle of excessive to even eating or even smoking too much, because all these can lead to probably like cardiovascular, like heart disease, high blood pressure. These are something that we need to be mindful, right? So we need to learn strategies to actually overcome these. I think sometimes we get stressed, then we cave into our cravings. So that can be quite detrimental to our health as well, right? So we need to also find a balance to see how we can stay calm and actually manage these along the way, along the plans that we have to best support us. So I'm thinking now, would there be a practical exercise that we can do to get us feeling more calm and grounded? And also, for example, sometimes when we have an important meeting, for say we are in the office and we have a presentation, so we can get a little bit, butterflies in the stomach because we have a presentation. So what would be one way we can actually practice and have that toolkit with us to work out our anxiousness or the stress? And for everyone out here, those of you who are listening in, if you encounter similarly, please do share and say, yeah, I experienced the stress, or if you notice that whether you have a plan, you took time to prioritize, if that helps, please feel free to share that in the text box. And then, or any questions about these strategies, Nick will help you to actually see what we can do to alleviate that as well. So yeah, Nick, what would you say would be helpful?
Right. Okay. As we've covered earlier, one of the signs of stress is when your heartbeat starts getting faster, right? Especially when you have, like I mentioned, a big presentation and you're feeling like heartbeat is increasing. You're finding it hard to breathe sometimes, and you're sweating. Maybe your palms get sweaty, and this, if you don't do something about it, this can lead to like a more serious anxiety. So what we do is when we feel this way and you want to calm yourself down, so we have to slow our breathing and then clear our mind. It's called grounding technique, but basically what it means is just basically to bring your mind to a more, I would say, stable or like calmer state, right? Okay, it's called five senses breathing because we focus, we focus our thinking and our mind to this, how your five senses perceive things around you, right? And it helps clear your mind of all these negative thoughts, maybe. So, what if it doesn't go right, and helps you focus on your breathing. All right. So, what you can do is find a comfortable place to sit, and you start with the five things you can do as you're breathing in and out. You start to look around you for the five things that you can see where you are, right? And every time you focus on them, just think about those things, the five things. It can be as simple as your hand, right? You can see your hand, the light, the table. So five things you can see. Just as you're breathing in and out, just focus on the things and nothing else, right? Once you have, and there's no need to rush. Take your time with each thing. Just focus on those things. And then once you're done with the five things you can see, move on to four things you can touch, right? It can be as simple as the fabric of your clothes, right? Your pants, the chair you're sitting on, anything that is within reach. Just focus on how it feels on your skin when you're touching it, right? Focus on the sensation. The next thing is three things you can hear. It can be as simple as the sound of your breathing, right? Breathing. So maybe the aircon sound. For the three things you can hear, where you're working is very quiet, so it requires a bit more concentration, which is good. which is good. It's not a bad thing because then it helps you focus your mind to just finding things that you can hear. So it helps push other things, unnecessary thoughts out, right? So it's okay if you find it like, "Oh, I cannot find things that I can hear." So keep breathing and focus. And the two things you can smell can be as simple as your own perfume, right? Some people like sweet perfume. Focus on that, and whatever smell around you. Again, the more we go down, you may find it difficult to find the things that you can hear or smell, which is good because then it helps you focus more your mind, streamline your mind. And last but not least is one thing you can taste. One question that people always ask: do I have to taste something, or do I imagine it? Right. Well, if you are in a position where you can, if you have a drink, for example, nearby, or you have mint, right? You can taste actually taste them, or if you don't, just imagine whatever taste you have in your mouth. For example, maybe you just had coffee, right? Sometimes it lingers, so those tastes. So yeah.
I think this is really good. It sounds like we can actually practice this anytime. Doesn't have to be a certain location. You feel anxious or you feel a bit flustered. So this sounds like an activity that you can actually do even if you're lining up, waiting to go in to take away food or into a restaurant. Because nowadays we have the protocol to scan the thermal. Sometimes if the crowd gets big and then we get a little bit like flustered, so we want to calm down. Sounds like it's actually. Thanks for sharing that, Nick. So I heard you mention breathing a few times. So would you be able to share an exercise that we can learn a little bit about what this breathing technique is, so that we can actually do it the right way, and also how it helps us? You mentioned to actually helps to alleviate or feeling anxiousness as well. So yeah, maybe a breathing activity that can actually be helpful.
All right. Well, breathing sounds simple, right? We do it without thinking. Like even when we're sleeping, we're breathing, right? So this is something that people often overlook. It's the simplest thing you can do to help in managing all this stress, feelings of unsettling feelings, for example, right? So because sometimes because of our lifestyle, or the way we used to do it, we tend to forget to take deep breaths, right? Like I'm not sure if everyone is aware or remembers, like when you're breathing in, it brings oxygen in and it helps feed the brain. But some people tend to, like maybe for health reason, tend to breathe shallow. So we always go back to deep breathing. What it means by deep breathing is you breathe all the way into your stomach, right? And not just in the chestal area. Like some people breathe like, I'm breathing deep, but what they do is like, and then the shoulder moves. Usually that means it's not deep breath. It doesn't go all the way into your stomach. So it's shallow breath, and over time, you may find yourself feeling short of breath if you keep doing that. So when we're doing any breathing exercises, even the first one, always deep breath all the way into your stomach from the nose. You inhale through the nose and then exhale through the mouth, right? And all the way into imagine, what does it mean to breathe all the way into your stomach? Well, imagine there's a balloon, right, in your stomach, and you're trying to inflate the balloon. So you're inhaling to inflate, so the balloon inflates, and then when you're breathing out, you deflate the balloon, pushing the air out, right? It's usually easier to see when you're lying down, then your stomach moves. You can see when you put your hand on your stomach and it moves instead of your shoulder, then you know you're doing it right lah. But when you're sitting, the easiest way is to put your hand on your stomach and breathe. It expands the diaphragm, and then so this breathing technique 478, what does it mean? What is 478? 478 is the seconds that you do each step. 4, breathing in, right? Breathing through the nose, deep breathing all the way to the stomach in 4 counts. Like for 4 counts, and then hold your breath in for 7 counts, right? And then breathe out through the mouth in 8 counts. Now, if you're not used to this breathing, sometimes when you're first trying it out, you may feel lightheaded and dizzy. So it's always better to do it while you're seated in a comfortable and safe position. And if you still find that it's too much for you, you can cut the seconds by half, but in the same ratio, so 2, 3.5, and 4. Right? 2 breathing in, 3.5 seconds holding, and 4 seconds breathing out. All right, and you can repeat for up to 4 times every time you do these exercises.
Okay, sounds like deep breathing is one of the best way, I think, immediately, right, to lower stress in our body, because when you breathe deeply, it sends a message to your brain to kind of immediately relax and calm down. Okay, and I understand that this technique can be found online as well for those of you interested, so they can actually look this up. And I believe YouTube, they also have some guided scripts as well. So this would be very helpful for those who are really trying out, right, the breathing technique. Okay, so once we have these strategies a little bit, we also want to know a little bit for some of us, right, who has multiple roles at work and at home. Sometimes this can also increase our stress level. You know, do you have to be realistic as well, right? How might one of these two, right, resolve this situation for us? Yeah.
All right. Okay. So once we've identified now that we know the signs of stress, and you're experiencing them, but you just are not sure of where is this stress coming from. You're experiencing it, you can feel it, you can see it, but you're not sure what to do in managing it or fixing it, right? Sometimes it's obvious, it's very clear, but sometimes you need a bit of reflection to do it. Like, for example, what you can do to identify your triggers, right? You're feeling stressed and it's at work, but suddenly one day you find that you're having a good day, and then suddenly you're feeling restless, and then you're experiencing all these signs, and you don't know what it is, what is causing it. So what you can do is, like, for 2 weeks, maybe take time to just observe your surrounding, the situation you're in at work, and when you start experiencing all these signs, and then note it down, right? You keep a journal to help you keep track of where what could be causing you distress. So notice what happened, right? Like, okay, I'm experiencing heavy breathing right now, I'm sweating, and suddenly I feel angry and restless. Okay, so note that down. I'm feeling all of this. And then you think about, what happened before I start experiencing this, and who was involved in that particular situation, right? And how did you react when that happened? So all of these things, note down, in the span of 2 weeks, perhaps. So it requires more awareness on your part and vigilance in terms of your surrounding and how you react to certain situation or certain people. And once you have some data or some information, then you can, hopefully it will help you easily, like, stream down to, like, oh, okay, so in all of this situation, I noticed this happened before I experienced this, or I noticed this is how I reacted before this happened, or to cause this to happen, for example. So you will notice, hopefully you will notice certain patterns. Then you can say, oh, okay, maybe that is where this stress is coming from. For example, right, if I may give a personal example of how this works. When I first started working, the environment I was in was a very, like, high workload environment. Deadlines are very fast, and I have to meet many deadlines in a day, and it's not just at work but also outside, because my work involves work outside as well. So it's not just deadline at work but also deadline outside. This is the job that I love doing, So when one day and I get along with everyone at work, right? But when I find myself to start having like unexplained pain in my body, and also I feel easily frustrated and angry at work, and I started isolating myself from colleagues, colleagues that I enjoy working with. What happened was one day I got like a chest pain. I went to the doctors, but the doctor said, "Oh, everything is fine, right? There's nothing wrong with you physically. So maybe you are stressed out, and you should take time off," which I did. And during that time off is when I start reflecting back on the events leading to that day. I notice I get agitated or I get upset when my boss keeps asking me about my work, keeps micromanaging, I would say. Right. It makes me, and then I realize it makes me feel like he doesn't trust me. It makes me feel like he doesn't trust my capabilities in carrying out my job, which is a very big thing for me because this is a job I love, right? And I thought I was doing a good job. So the fact that he's micromanaging me makes me stress. So what I did was, when I go back, I noticed before, like what I did, I don't update my boss about my work because I'm too focused on meeting the deadlines that I don't report back to him. And I realized that is making him feel like, oh, maybe I'm not doing my job or not doing it according to his standards lah, basically. So what I changed was when I went back is I communicate more with my boss. Like every step or every task that I have, I always go back to him and discuss with him and update him on my progress, even though the deadline is like way further in the future, so that he knows what I'm up to. Basically, over time, I find that he micromanages less, he asks me less, and yep, in the long run, it helps me perform better at work.
Okay, so this is a really good sharing from you, Nick. Thank you for actually allowing us a little bit insight into how we can actually work with our own stresses and come out positive, right? Like you said, you love this job a lot when you first started. So stress affects everyone. We sort of got that down, right? And how we actually manages it, actually, it's really truly like I'm hearing communicating with your bosses or taking some action plan to like problem solve what's the situation. Like you said, you're stuck in this. If you continue to go on, you're gonna have more physical pain, right? And then you decide to just have a conversation, see where the unmet expectations or needs are, and then bridge that gap. So I think this is something very important for all of us to take note as well. Sometimes we do find ourselves, trying to ostracize a little bit. We know something is not right with our workplace or environment, but we just keep quiet, right? So another thing that I would like to know a little bit is what would you say is the best approach? If you're not able to change our job or situation per se, what steps can we take to deal with it more positively to avoid further stress, right? So where can we go about from this?
Right. So we've talked about some of the ways to help us manage stress when we are experiencing it. But of course, it's the same thing as a car. When there's a problem, we fix it. But we also do maintenance work. We for example, we drive carefully. We try to change the oil regularly or put air in the tire regularly so that it doesn't get to a point where it needs to be fixed, right? So it's the same as for ourselves. There are certain habits that we pick up so that we won't reach a point where the stress gets too unmanageable, right? First, let's see. Coping. We've talked about this earlier. Like adopting more healthy ways of coping, so that it doesn't affect you more in the long run in a bad way, right? Second is staying organized. What it means by staying organized is, again, time management skills, right? You set goals for yourself. Whenever you're at work, you come to work, you know you have a lot of things on your plate, but then you set goal for yourself. Today, what would I like to complete? And is it okay if I push some of the things to the next day or the next week, for example? You make lists, prioritize which one needs to be done first, and acknowledge self limit. All of us have the same amount of hours per day at work. So you have to know whether it is within your capabilities to complete within the time that you have, right? And if not, let's move on to number 3. If you feel like it's too much, seek support. I have been asked before, like, well, if I need help, if I ask for help, if I seek support, does that mean I'm incapable? Does that mean I'm weak? I'm not able to, do things on my own? That is not true, obviously. Like when you're working, you have your colleagues, right? So yeah, it's okay to get help. It doesn't mean you're incapable. A metaphor I like is, I don't know if it makes sense, but like a roof, right? A roof is a roof, but for a roof to like reach its full potential as a working roof, it needs pillars to support them, right? Then it becomes a roof. It becomes a roof. So even a roof needs support. But then you will say like, why don't I be the pillars instead? Then I don't need support. I can support other people. I want to be that. Well, even pillars need support from other pillars, because usually pillars come in at least 2. One pillar will not be a very effective pillar in holding anything out. So yeah, even pillars need support. So yeah, seek support. Seek support from your colleagues. And again, I mentioned they understand the situation you're in. So talk to them, reach out. Even if it's not to talk about problems, just to vent, take your mind off things, talk. Your family, your friends, we've covered this earlier. All right, self-care. What it means by self-care is, like, for example, if the environment at work is not uncomfortable, make it comfortable as much as you can. Bring pillows, for example, or if you like nice smelling things, wear perfume, have aromatherapy. Some people dress up really nice to work. They wear clothes that makes them feel good, so that when they go to work, they feel good about themselves. I had a colleague who has a mirror on her desk because she likes to put on makeup and she likes to look at herself. Every time she looks at herself and nice makeup, it makes her feel rejuvenated and motivated. So yeah, do that if it helps makes you feel better, right? Last but not least is tolerance. Basically, sometimes we are put in a situation where there's not much we can do. But what you can do, like maybe not change the situation that you're in, but what you can change is the way you look at things, right? You change how you approach things. Be flexible and open. If, for example, right now, the current situation, there's so many SOPs now when you go to work, so many new things that you have to adapt to. So what you can do instead of resisting it, be open to it. See how you can make it work for you. Be open to change. This is your opportunity to learn new things, pick up new skills. If, for example, there's a change in your role at work, this is your opportunity to, like I said, pick up new things, learn new skills, and who knows, more doors might be open for you.
Well, that's really helpful, Nick. And I heard that you've prepared a guided activity for audiences here today. Looking forward to that. Let's see what it is as we are
Yes.
winding down the end of our discussion today, being mindful of time in case for those of audiences that have a question or two. So what is this? And please enlighten us about this.
All right, desk exercise. From its name, it's exercises you can do at your desk. For those who are like, I really don't have time to step off from my desk, but sometimes I feel tired, especially when you're typing a lot, right? You're punch down typing. You can have physical discomfort. Some of the things you can do, let's focus on the wrist because people get carpal tunnel syndrome. So what you can do is some wristband or wrist rotation. It's very simple. It's what it's in the name. Wristband basically is when you put your palms together in front of you and then press them together and then push down. When you're feeling a bit of stress here, so you're flexing it. Not so much until it hurts, but just enough pressure. Hold for 5 seconds and then release. And wrist rotation is when you just, put your hand in the fist and then rotate, so that it stretches your wrist and releases any stresses that you experience while working. Neck. Do we have time to go through?
Yeah, I think we can do neck. Maybe these are the important, right? Wrist, neck, and shoulder. Yeah.
Okay, so neck drop is simple. You sit straight, make sure to put your spine really straight, and then slowly drop your neck. Touches for your chin to touch your chest, and then hold for 5 seconds, and then slowly go back up. And head tilt is where you go to the sideways. All right, sit straight and then tilt. So it stretches this part and the back. So when you're hunched all the time, this is when you stretch and then release all the neck stress. Shoulder, right? This is where the pain always is. Shoulder roll, simple. Roll your shoulder back and forth. Right? And shoulder shrug is when you're like I don't know, like teenagers always do that. So you do that. Sit and then push it up and then release. Push it up and then release. It helps relieve the stress on your back and on your shoulder.
Okay, I think for audiences who are with us still, so being mindful of time as well. For those of you who want more, please type yes. I want to know more about back and lower body, so Nick can show us. If you want to have some answers to your questions, feel free to share them on a textbook as well. So yeah, we're just going to wrap this up. So that will be the first part of our thoughtful chat conversation today. Hope you find this approach useful, and feel free to pick and choose whatever best suits you. So if you feel like taking the first step to improve your communication skills, or work out things that can alleviate stresses, so try and use Nick's tips that she shared with us today. So yeah, we are open to any questions that you have out there, and if not, feel free to actually check out Thoughtful Chat. So I would like to say thank you to Nick for taking the time off to share her expertise with us today. And also thank you everyone to take time to share with us. So Thoughtful Chat is an online mobile platform I shared earlier. So feel free to use the promo code for everyone here today, Hello Try TFC. And this is a 7-day free trial starting for today for first sign up. And it expires all the way to 31st December. So feel free to give it a try and see how online coaching helps. And if you feel like, you want to have a one-on-one personal coaching with our professionals are mental health trained. So feel free to check it out. And Nick is still here for our questions, for those of you who have any, or even just comments about what you've learned, some takeaways. We'll be happy to share more or hear from all of you today. Yeah. Anyone who would like to share anything? Or maybe Nick, do you have any final thoughts so that our viewers who are still here today, sort of a takeaway for them?
Okay, well, maybe if you're not used to doing all this thing, it may seem overwhelming at first. Even the breathing exercise, some people have said, I've tried 1 or 2 times, it doesn't work. So give me something else. Well, it says practicing healthy habits, not perfecting healthy habits. Mm-hmm. So it's always a practice. It takes practice, and it's an ongoing process. We're always learning new things. So one thing I could say to take away is keep practicing, and stay healthy. There's no end to practicing healthy habits or picking up new things, and you can always apply this to different situations.
Okay. I think that's something that's already ingrained in my mind here. So I'm already visualizing, identify, manage, track, and practice. Right? That sounds like sums up what you have taught us today. And I think that's something I think we can put into our checklist to do. Yeah. So thank you everyone for participating and being here and supporting us. That's all the time we have today. So feel free to check us out at thoughtful.world if you're interested to see what we do. And also thank you so much to our partners at Common Ground for allowing us and having us here to have discussion today. And I think it's a wrap.